What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I'm going to be doing a video that I have technically already done. I just did it at a weird time in the year, and that video was either my top 5 or top 10 most carried knives of 2019. I remember there being a comment on the video going, why are you doing this in like June? You know, why didn't you do this like right before the end of the year? And he was right. So I'm going to be going over every knife that's in my collection that has actually seen some sort of carry. Even if it's only been, in my pocket for half a day, it's out here. This is not my entire collection. I actually have a video about my entire collection, but there's a lot of knives in there that don't get carried at all for one reason or another. All of these knives have actually seen pocket time, but some have seen substantially more than others. So we are going to get down to my top 5, but I'm going to slowly narrow it down and eliminate knives. And I'm going to talk about essentially my carry experience with each individual knife. I figured that might be kind of fun, might be entertaining for you guys. Before we get started, whether you are new to my channel or you've been around for a long time, if you'd like to support my channel, I do have a Patreon where I've got some cool Metal Complex logo stickers and some Metal Knight helmet stickers at the lower tiers. I also offer once a week Patreon exclusive content for any tier, even the $1 tier. So if you'd like to support this channel and check that stuff out, and at the same time get yourself a shout out, whether you want me to plug your Instagram, your YouTube, or just say something funny or ridiculous, no problem, as long as it's appropriate for YouTube. The support would absolutely mean the world to me. So anyways, there's not going to be any structure in this video. I'm going to go about this organically so you guys can see kind of what in my collection gets carried and for what reason. So we're going to narrow it down to the 5 that I carry the most, and I'll talk about those. We're going to just slowly eliminate things, and I'll just kind of give a, brief dialogue about them. The knife that gets carried the least out of everything you're seeing out on this table is my new Microtech Combat Troodon. And that's because it's very new. I'm still in the honeymoon phase with this guy. It did go in my pocket once, and truthfully, I just carried it around the house, just clicking it out and clicking it back in and not actually cutting anything. So yeah, unfortunately, I have to eliminate this guy right off the bat. We're going to be moving that one into its carry pouch off camera so I don't bump it off the table. Next up, like I said, there's no structure, so I'm just going to be kind of picking things up and moving them out of the way. Truthfully, you know what's crazy out of this bunch? The Tape Designs Hornet. This was a gift from my buddy Shaker MT, and this is an awesome knife, and it's actually a great user. Full titanium N690 blade. It's got the little thumb hole deployer, and then it's got a flipper tab. This is a great knife. I don't know why it just doesn't get carried that often. Keep in mind, guys, this order is going to be a little bit different from my last video where I did this. But yeah, truthfully, I love this knife, and Harry, I'm very appreciative for the gift. For whatever reason, it just doesn't get carried that much. So we're going to go ahead and eliminate that guy. Oh boy, moving on here for this year. Trying to think of what gets carried the least. Truthfully, next up, another gift from Harry, one that I love and that I play with a lot, but really doesn't get carried. This knife is fun. Like, I will literally pick this knife up and just slice a piece of paper with it just to be like, yeah, that's a slicey blade. And it's so crazy and huge and ridiculous. It's fun, but it's like novelty fun. It's a perfectly functional knife. I think Kaiser's got a great price on it. This is the XL Sheepdog, if I didn't say that. Amazing action, great materials for the money. It's just so big and bulky. I mean, it reminds me of a flipper version of the Medford Praetorian tie with more of a sheep's foot blade. It just doesn't get carried ultra often. Excuse my dogs, I have no idea what they're barking at out there. Oh boy, next up, what gets carried slightly more than those, but less than everything else? Truthfully, and I think it's because it's so new, the Kaiser Doman. So I have not reviewed this knife yet, and I think it will make an excellent user. It's in an awkward place in my collection because it's not like I enjoy budget knives. I don't traditionally enjoy smaller knives. I think I'm wanting a version of this knife that's bigger, and I know people are like, the large Doman exists, but in my opinion, it's in a steel that I feel like is, well, basically this one is in N690. I want the large one to be in N690, and I don't want the crazy aggressive texture pattern that they've got on the large Doman. I want this texture pattern. So this, I love this, and I play with it, but it just doesn't get carried all that much. Moving on, this is going to get increasingly more difficult, and it's probably going to be a fairly long episode, guys. What gets carried the least? Okay, I know this one. Next up, this is the 3/4 Quake, and this is the Todd Begg Steelcraft Series 3/4 Quake, and this was a gift from my buddy David, and as you can see, it is still very new. Again, I play with this knife, and it has seen some pocket time. It's just it's so rare that this thing actually goes in the pocket. I love it. I don't know, it's been in my collection a lot longer than some of this stuff. And it's in the drawer. It's just I always reach for something else. This is a great knife, and anybody else who's got it, can attest to that. Great steel, great detent, great materials, great fit and finish. It's awesome. It's just not one that gets carried as much as my other stuff. Getting more difficult now. Let's move this guy down here so he's in the proper place. Okay, what gets carried the next least? Oh boy, I can't believe we're actually here, but yeah, we are. We're at this point where I have to admit that my Hinderer XM18, while it has recently, this is Excalibur, by the way, and anybody who doesn't know what I mean by Excalibur, it's a word that I use to describe any individual's perfect folding knife. The story behind this for any newcomers is I have hunted my entire life up to this point for what I consider to be the very best folding knife on the planet. For a bunch of different reasons that I explain in a series called The Quest for the Perfect Folding Knife. You can check that out. There's a playlist along with many other playlists on this channel. And I go into detail about my reasons for, coming to the conclusions that I did about this knife and why I chose this particular Generation 6 3.5 inch XM18 with the tri-way pivot system and the slicer blade, 20 CV, stone washed, and the textured titanium scale. This was very particularly picked out. I've owned, I think, around 25 different Hinderers. At least 17 of those have been XM18s. I can't remember the exact number, but this is my perfect XM18. It's just very new. And while it has seen some pocket time, it just hasn't had the chance this year to see the pocket time of some of these other knives. Now, the truth is that another extremely recent acquisition has seen ever so slightly more pocket time than my Hinderer XM18, and it will continue to see an enormous amount of pocket time. It's just because of, when I picked it up. And guys, my memory of this could be slightly flawed. Those of you who have gone back and seen every single episode and you know exactly when I acquired things, you might be calling me out on some stuff. It's hard to remember, but truthfully, I think the Super Freak is the one, this is going to see some crazy pocket time in 2020. But it hasn't had a chance to see a lot of pocket time because I just recently acquired it. This was a gift by my good buddy, Justin the Hunter on Instagram, and I love it. It just hasn't had the chance to see the pocket time, Moving on here, next up is probably going to be the Kershaw Blur for partially the same reason. This particular Kershaw Blur was purchased as a gift, but he's got a weird sequence of letters in his name, and I can never remember it. But you can see there, this knife actually has seen some use. This was my first Kershaw Blur, and it was one of the first nicer knives that I acquired years and years and years ago that kind of pushed me into this hobby. And I had made mention in a video that I had lost my original one, and he took note of that, and he purchased me another one that was exactly the same. And for that, I'll forever be grateful. It just doesn't see as much pocket time as some of these others because it was a more recent acquisition. Okay, what is next? I would have to say the next least used knife of this bunch is probably... Boy, honestly, it's probably my Lion Steel. The Lion Steel TRE has been on this channel forever. This was a gift from my wife, and I love this knife. It's a great little EDC size. I'm very used to the deployment mechanism, despite missing it there and missing it here. But you can see there, I haven't had any practice with it here recently because, it's one of the oldest knives in my collection that you're seeing here. It's just not one that gets carried often. It's chosen. Much less than some of this other stuff. You can see there's a little pocket clip wear. This is a knife that I will still carry to special occasions and to church and cocktail parties, things like that. It just doesn't get carried quite as much. Next up, what am I going to eliminate next? Oh boy, this is getting difficult. Probably, it's right there in the same foggy area. This is the, oh my gosh, is it the Carver? Yeah, this is the Carver. I forget his first name. It was a gift from Jeff. It's a Damasteel sort of Kiradashi with a Timascus pocket clip that has way too many fingerprints on it. I carry this sometimes as just a secondary item where I'm going. A lot of times I just carry it as a conversation piece. It does see pocket time, just not as much, and it's a fairly recent acquisition, so not as much as some of these other things. Moving on here, I think right around the same area of carry, probably this, and I always forget the exact model. I think this is an S5 Mini from Zeebo Knives. Another recent acquisition, another gift from Jeff. That's at GoodNowJeff on Instagram. Fantastic guy. This is a custom knife. It's great, and I carry it a lot, and I use it. I've got some in some areas where they have some snail trails forming. I love this knife. It's so new. You know, it's not incredibly new, but it's so new. Well, yeah, it is. Jeff, you gave me this here fairly recently. It's hard to remember. It's so new. It just doesn't see as much pocket time. Another knife that was a gift from my wife that sees more pocket time than the last gift that I showed, but less overall than some of these other knives out here is the Microtech SOCOM Elite. I love this knife. I truly do. I just carried it the other day, which made me realize I should carry this more often. So I've had this knife for a while. You know, you guys remember some of you guys remember my original review on it after my wife gave it to me. This is a great knife. It's very large. Despite it not being incredibly heavy, it is very large, and it just doesn't quite see as much pocket time as some of these others. But this is a great knife. God, it's a nearly fall shut action. In fact, this one still is basically fall shut, and it's got thumb studs that act as the external stops. I love the large fasteners. Is that like a T20 pivot or something like that? Love this knife. It just doesn't quite see as much pocket time as some of these others. Okay, next up, honestly, the next one I'm going to have to eliminate is probably the Gerber Flatiron. You're like, how did that make it so long? Did he forget about this? So whenever my dad and brother come over to do outdoor projects, there's 3 knives that I grab. This one, the Cold Steel Tough Light, and the Ontario Rat, and I just give them one of each. I just whoever, you know, sometimes I end up with this guy, sometimes I end up with one of these two. But those two are not over here helping with projects all the time. If it's just me, I'm taking these two with me, and this guy's staying inside. I actually gave this knife a fairly negative review. But the truth is it actually does come outside and go to work with me sometimes. It's not my favorite knife in the world. I think it has a lot of flaws, but you know what? Honestly, it's held up okay. It makes a decent work knife. Not super expensive, you know, even for the lackluster materials that you're getting. So, you know, and honestly, and surprisingly, it does get carried fairly often. Okay, next up, the next one I'm going to have to eliminate is probably going to be the Red Horse Chopper. This is actually a knife that I also, you know, periodically will take outside with me when I'm working. This is super thick, super heavy, completely unmilled titanium, CPM D2, and in this very aggressive Wharncliffe style blade. This is another gift from Jeff. I love this knife. This thing is so aggressive and crazy, and I've actually managed to work out almost all of the lock stick on it, which is fantastic. This is a big, beefy monster of a knife, and it's an absolute tank. It is a workhorse. These things are built incredibly tough. You can see exactly how thick all of this is. 187 thousandths between the titanium and the blade all the way around. It's just it's a monster, you know. It just doesn't, I mean, in terms of EDC, I'm not outside working all the time. I'm actually just more day-to-day stuff. So some of these things just get carried more than others. Moving on here, this is the Quest Custom Knives Gentleman's Spear Point. This was actually made for me by Greg Geckel. I love this thing. It's got a completely fall shut action, and I had requested purple because I didn't have anything in purple anode, despite being a huge Kansas University fan. This is just cool. I wasn't aware of Quest Custom Knives after Jeff introduced me to Greg, and he said, I built this for you to use. I want you to take it out. I want you to use it and beat on it. And as you can see, if we show, is the knife going to prove me wrong? I promise you there are marks on this. I promise I used this knife, but I guess it's not as marked up as I thought, or my lighting is just not properly displaying the scratches. I'm sure people are like, yeah, right, Complex, sure you use it. Fantastic knife, expensive knife, wonderful user style knife. I absolutely love this thing. I'm glad that I've realized that I carry it as much as I do. I really, really love this thing. Okay, moving on here. Probably the next one up that I'm going to eliminate is the ODT. I do like to carry this knife, and I often carry it with a lot of my other knives. Like I'll carry a knife because it doesn't have pocket clips. You know that little tiny pocket that's on your right or left side of your jeans that like is, what is it made for? Is it made for coins? I don't know. This thing fits in there perfectly. This is a Curtis custom knife. Sort of got a little chisel looking blade, though it is a conventional V-ground blade. I believe this is CTS XHP and then full titanium. This was a gift from Jeff, another gift from Jeff, and I love this thing. And it does get carried fairly often. It does a great job. I love using this thing as a little package opener and just pulling out and using it. And it's a great conversation piece. People always ask about it. And I don't like handing it to people, though, because when I explain, like, they do this and they're like, oh, I won't deploy. I'm like, well, you kind of have to give it a little bit of risk. And then it's actually been thrown once. I have an episode about not handing certain types of people your knives, and that's one that I don't really like to hand to people. Is the camera shifting a little bit? It seems like the camera might be shifting a little bit, but anyway, so these are definitely some of the most carried knives in my collection. The next one up that I'm going to eliminate here is probably going to be the Praxis. This is a very new acquisition. Boy, have I started carrying this a lot recently. I really like this thing. A lot of you guys know I actually ended my series, The Quest for the Perfect Budget Knife, saying that this was basically the closest thing to what I would consider to be the perfect budget knife. If you have not experienced this knife, you should. It's almost perfect. I mean, it is truly an exceptional piece for the money, and I think Civivi just knocked it out of the park on this thing. I love this guy. I just broke down a ton of boxes just yesterday with this guy. It's just amazing. Recent acquisition. It was actually a gift from a gentleman named Ken, so I appreciate that gift, absolutely. Next up, one that I've also recently started carrying a lot more, but just don't carry it quite as much as some of these others. That's the ProTech. This is the ProTech SNG. This is kind of an upper tier model. It actually says here on the inside, number 2 of 40 right there. This was another gift from Jeff. Very generous guy. I love this knife. This is what has made me want to get a real Strider. These are the full titanium handles. The only titanium automatic knife I've ever handled. It also has the pearl inlay on the button there. 154 cm blade and just excellent ergonomics. I love this. This is what has really pushed me over the edge in terms of like wanting to get a Strider. So I love this thing. It's fairly new. I was in a honeymoon phase with it for a little bit after Jeff gave it to me, so I was kind of babying it, but I have started carrying it a little bit more, and I really enjoy carrying that. Man, we're down to like the real heavy hitters here. These knives, let me sort of arrange them in a more aesthetically appealing, or maybe, actually it won't be, it'll just sort of be haphazard. I'm just gonna sort of move them up here so that we don't create any patterns while we knock things out. I promise that these were laid out in completely random order. There's no significance to their position on the table. This is just where I decided to put them when I started the video. So these knives truly get carried more than anything else that I carry, but they do have, you know, there are some still on this table that get carried substantially more than anything else on the table, and we're gonna start knocking them down. Where are we at here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so these are my top 10 right here, guys. We're gonna knock it down to my top 5. Okay, so of this group, I am sad to say, you know what? No, I can't do that one yet because of how recently one of these was built. And when that word built, you guys are going to know my custom built, not a custom knife, just custom built Benchmade bug out. I love this thing. And this thing sees pocket time nearly every other day. It's got the Flitanium scales. It's got the XXX Adrenaline XXX pivot, and it's got the axis bar that is also yeah, that's a custom axis bar that's also titanium, and then the titanium thumb studs. I actually went out of my way to create a fully monochromatic version of the bug out. Custom titanium bag spacer as well by, oh my gosh, Zach Stuff. If by any chance you are down in the comments section, remind me of that maker again. That guy that does the custom parts, he also does scales and he does a backspacer. I'm so sorry because he's really nice. I talked to him on Instagram and almost did a full build with him, but I just want to make sure that I, you know, to give you guys the right information. I love this knife. I carry it all the time, but it's newer than a lot of these. So despite it being carried like every other day, it hasn't been carried as much as some of these others. Okay, moving on here. The next one I'm going to have to knock out, truthfully, is going to be the PMP Revenge. This was a gift from Harry or Shaker MT. He gave this to me a long time ago, and I remember seeing this knife for the first time and thinking, that's an interesting knife. But it just really didn't grab me. And then I got it in hand, and I got to look at that blade shape, and it's M390. You can see right there. And I was like, I really like this. I really like that blade shape. It cuts well. It feels good. It feels substantial, but it's not, you know, a massive burden on my pocket. And I just really like it. It's a great knife, and it definitely gets carried often. Not as often as some of the others on the table, however. Oh boy. God dang, we are really getting down to it. And I know a lot of you who watched that other video are like, this is really similar to the other video. And it is, but I just want to be truthful about what I carried in 2019 and the exact order that I'm going to be knocking these out in. Next one I'm going to have to knock out is probably the Cold Steel Tough Light. Cold Steel Tough Light definitely gets used. It's definitely been resharpened. It basically gets used when I'm going outside to do work in my backyard. It does not really get carried in my office. It's not truly an EDC knife, but it does get, I mean, I do a lot in my backyard. When my wife and I purchased this house, we purchased it with the intention of altering things and adding things. So a knife like this, one that I almost consider disposable, but extremely tough, is indispensable. Ironically, it's disposable and at the same time indispensable. I think you guys know what I mean. Tough Light's a great knife, yeah, it gets carried a lot. For the exact same reason, one that's basically right there beside it, but just gets carried ever so slightly more. This my Ontario Rat Model 1. This is one of my favorite budget knives that exists. I actually used to be my dedicated cardboard, you know, my box breaker downer, I guess, before I got the Civivi Backlash. Wait, not Backlash, the Praxis. Love this thing. It gets used during outdoor jobs, indoor jobs. Like I said, it breaks down boxes in my backyard. It just gets used. It's just a tool. It'll get grabbed, and I can use it and not have to think about it, not have to worry about it. Yeah, it absolutely gets used. Okay, next up. Truthfully, my dedicated backup knife. This knife it's usually in my back. Well, not usually. It makes it in my back pocket once or twice a week. So this is difficult. Between this and the actual number 5, like this is very close to making it into the actual top 5 in terms of carry. But when I think back to knives that have actually been in my pocket the most over 2019, this knife is almost there. It is, if I need a backup knife or I feel like I'm going to be somewhere where somebody might ask me to use a pocket knife, and I might be okay with using some of my knives, but I'm not so much trusting of the people I'm going to be around. This is the knife I bring with me so that I can hand this to them and say, yeah, go ahead and use it. This thing gets beat on. Absolutely, it gets used. It's a tool, you know? It's a fantastic tool. If you've never experienced the Cadet, you know, absolutely do. Guys, a lot of these knives are down in the description. You guys have heard me say this a million times. My description is set up in a way that's got, you know, high-end production knives, my favorite budget knives, knife maintenance stuff, EDC tools and items. So if you've got an itch and you're wanting to scratch it, you know, maybe this video has inspired you or, you know, got you kind of salivating, just take a look at my description. I've got some great links down there, and they're all categorized out so you can find whatever it is you're looking for. So here we are, guys. These are my top 5 most pocketed knives of 2019. These things, truthfully, now we're gonna keep eliminating them. So if you're still here and you're like, is that the end of the video? No, I'm gonna eliminate them. I'm gonna get down to number 1. These things have truly been in my pocket more than anything else this year. They're just amazing. Each one of these knives is nearly perfect, and they make fantastic EDC tools. You're gonna see a trend here. 80% of them are Spyderco. Then that's, I mean, if you guys haven't seen my video about what's the deal with Spyderco knives, I talk about my love for Spyderco knives and why I think they're excellent. I think they're built as tools first and glamour items second. No pomp and frill, just function. And I think they're great. So the first one I'm going to knock out here, surprisingly, yeah, I don't know that I can do that. No, I'm thinking about this in the moment. Now, if I'm going to be honest with myself, no, it can't be the Manix. It has to be the PM2. PM2 gets carried a lot, you know? For a long time, it was a dedicated size comparison knife. You guys know the story behind the custom scales. No, this isn't an M4 blade. It's a standard S30V Spyderco PM2. I just did not like the original scales. I didn't like the original position of the pocket clip. Once I changed out the scales to these sort of moon, you know, jade or whatever you call these scales. No, they don't glow in the dark. But these jade scales, and put this MXG deep carry clip on it and this Flitanium backspacer, then I really loved it. And I do carry it. I love it. Not as much as some of these others, but it is definitely a knife that gets carried a lot more than some of the others in my collection. Next one I'm going to eliminate is going to be obviously the Spyderco Manix 2. The Manix 2 is, you can see there, it's really had some use. I love the Manix 2 in its base form. I think it's perfect, but I did add the Putnam custom scales, the G10 custom scales, and then I also added the Flitanium locking cage, and then I added a black MSG deep carry clip. Long relationship with this knife. It's one of the best knives in Spyderco's line, and I just love it. This thing has been around. I think this knife has been on the channel longer than any other knife in my collection. I will never get rid of it. I've put too much money in it for one thing, but as my buddy Ricky has pointed out many times, I can never get rid of this Manix because it's such an integral part of this channel now. You know, it's just like, it's a presence on the channel, much like the Lady of the Sea, which I'm sure you guys are like, I can't believe the Lady of the Sea didn't make the carry list. She has a different role in this channel. And I have no control over her, right? Anyways, the Spyderco Manix 2 is definitely one that gets carried. It's just not quite as often as some of these others. Top three, these definitely are, these are basically rotated amidst each other. I mean, these make up, between these three, this is probably 75% of my, no, it's more than that. It's like 80% of my carry rotation is between these three. Next one I'm going to knock out, the Hogue Ritter RSK MK1 G2. My goodness, what a fantastic knife. It might be like the most universally recommended knife for people right now. These knives run about 155 bucks. Blade shape was designed by the legendary Doug Ritter, a man who we should all absolutely be supporting in every way that we can. You know, he really fights for our knife rights. Fantastic blade shape, awesome flat, just very functional. On top of that, it's M390, this incredible contoured and textured G10 that's just right, just enough texturing to really make you feel secure, but not so much that's going to tear your hands up. The Able Lock, I mean, it's just, the Axis Lock is good, but the Able Lock, honestly, I think is better. This knife is just smoother and easier to operate than any Benchmade that I've ever messed around with. And you know, while I still love the Griptilian, I think that the RSK MK1 G2 is the most perfect version of the Griptilian. Good looking backspacers, fantastic pocket clip, nearly a perfect knife for the money. Love that knife. Okay, so I'm going to make a big deal out of this, guys, because these two knives, like truthfully, both of these knives see more carry time than the Hogue Ritter. And a lot of you have been around long enough to remember when I unboxed the Shaman. And how much I freaked out about it, and how much I love that knife, and I constantly refer to it as, like one of the greatest folding knives that has ever existed. And this is interesting where we're at here. For those of you, for the 10 people I'm sure who are left who are like actually wanted to wait and watch a 30-minute video, or however long this ends up being. The Shaman in a lot of ways still represents what I consider to be the greatest ergonomic lines that exist in a pocket knife right now. And it has an excellent blade shape, one that is clearly more pushed towards hard use and durability, excellent steel, made in the United States, Golden, Colorado, by the legendary, designed by the legendary Sal Gless. You can see his insignia there. And of course we have the compression lock, some nearly fully contoured scales, and just truthfully the ergonomic lines of this thing. I mean, this is just perfect. I've said time and time again, this knife would be Excalibur. If Flitanium ever decides to make some titanium scales for this, I will purchase them and immediately have them sent off to be textured and will crown a new Excalibur. Yes, even over my Hinder XM18. Now, if I get a 20CV version of that, even better. However, my wife gave me this Spyderco Para 3 in Maximate, and I was really lusting after Maximate. I was interested in it, and I thought, well, the downside to it is it's basically not going to resist any type of corrosion. Guys, this knife makes it into my pocket almost every single day, and it's because I've realized, despite my love for a robust and incredibly durable folding knife, right? It's just my current day-to-day needs don't require a lot of what the Shaman has to offer. And that being said, it still is one that makes it in my pocket an enormous amount of time. And for the longest time, you know, since I got the Para 3, you know, and a lot of you will remember, like, didn't you on, you know, that wasn't that long ago. It was like 3 or 4 months ago. It would have been back in August when I unboxed that. So I've only actually had it for 5 months. The Shaman I've had much longer. But in terms of the amount of, you know, the time that it gets into my pocket, since I got it, I would say at least 4 days out of the week, sometimes every day of the week, the Para 3 makes it in there. And it's because of, you know, what I use a knife for on a day-to-day basis, right? Now, the original position of the pocket clip I didn't like, and a lot of people don't like that, right? It's actually a really bad position for the pocket clip, but this MXG deep carry clip makes room for that hole, makes it perfectly deep carry, and at the same time, it completely negates any remnants of a hot spot. What you're left over with, in my opinion, is just one of the best general EDC knives out there. Do I think this knife is as capable as the Shaman? No. Do I love it as much as the Shaman? Almost, but no, I still love the Shaman more. Do I carry it more than the Shaman? Yes, I do. This is just a perfect carry knife for me. A lot of people say, what about the lightweight one? Guys, I don't like FRN. I'm not interested in the lightweight one. I have an entire series about that, about an entire episode in a series where I talk about why I don't like FRN. So this G10, this gray G10 Maximate, this tumbled Maximate Para 3. Maximate, by the way, is a beast. I have no, as far as I can tell, no corrosion and just the hint of a start of a patina on this thing. And it makes it in my pocket all the time. Guys, it gets used. Maximate is so hard, right? Nearly 70 Rockwell. It's like 68 Rockwell. It's almost, I mean, just scratch resistant. The edge is still razor sharp despite being, you know, pushed through so many boxes and, you know, pieces of tape and rope and stuff. On top of that, the ergonomics are just fantastic. I can really lock into this thing. And it has the compression lock, so it's easy to manipulate, right? It's got a little bit of an awkward carry profile because of that hump right there, but really overall, the thing just sits in my pocket. It's so easy. It's such a straightforward tool. In my last video, this was in second place and this was in first place, but I found here at the end of 2019, the Para 3 has actually passed the Shaman. And that's interesting because, like I said, I still like the Shaman more than the Para 3. It's just sometimes you have to be honest with yourself, step back and go, what is it do I need? You know, what is it do I prefer to carry and why? So I found that, you know, my needs, I mean, truthfully, the Para 3 is probably still overkill, but in terms of my day-to-day needs, the Para 3 does everything that I want and then some in a better way than the Shaman. It weighs less, it's smaller overall. It might in some ways be a little bit easier to manipulate. Though that still doesn't change how much I love this thing. And like I said, I'm still holding out for Flitanium to make those titanium scales. That might push it back into the #1 spot. But anyways, guys, this was a super, super long video. And I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys had fun watching it. 2019 has been an amazing year for this channel. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who has supported me, whether you or a Patreon supporter, or whether you're a subscriber, just somebody who periodically stops in and just views my channel. That's fine. I'm appreciative of everybody who interacts, you know, the people on Instagram, my few followers on Twitter, just everybody. This has been awesome. I am amazed every day at how positive my comments section tends to stay. And everybody's just been so cool. So thank you so much. I've developed some amazing friendships over the year, and I am infinitely grateful. Let's see what 2020 has to offer, not just for this channel, but for the knife world in general. I'm really excited. I hope you are too. Anyways, guys, that's going to be pretty much it for today's episode. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on this Metal Complex logo right here and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.